In this series, we're going to be going through the book of Daniel, and I'm just going to be highlighting things that I find interesting, things that stand out to me. And we're going to start right at the beginning of the book with verse 1 in chapter 1. And we're going to particularly be looking at a phrase, the third year. So let's get into Daniel 1:1. In the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And as I mentioned on the previous slide, we're looking at this phrase, in the third year. And it's interesting to note in the book of Daniel, there are 3 chapters that start with this phrase, chapter 1, chapter 8, and chapter 10. And they all signify the start of a new section or a new vision or something like that in the book of Daniel. Let's study this a bit more. In the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah. And what's interesting here is that the third year is attached to Jehoiakim, the king of Judah. But if we go and look at the other chapters, so chapter 8, this is in the third year of the reign of King Belshazzar. So this is a different king. In the third year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after that which appeared to me at the first. So Daniel 1:1 was the third year of the king of Judah, and Daniel 8:1 is the third year of King Belshazzar, who was the last king of Babylon. And lastly, in Daniel 10, we see the same phrase again. In the third year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a word was revealed to Daniel, who was named Belshazzar. And the word was true, and it was a great conflict. And he understood the word and had understanding of the vision. So we've seen 3 verses, one in the start of chapter 1, one in the start of chapter 8, and one in the start of chapter 10, that each begin with the same phrase, in the third year, but they each are referring to a different king. And not only is this just a different king, but these kings belong to different kingdoms. So if we look at Daniel chapter 1, this was Jehoiakim, king of Judah, as we've already seen. We look at Daniel chapter 8. This was Belshazzar, who was a king of Babylon, as we've already seen. And in the last verse, we saw in chapter 10 that Cyrus was a king of Persia. And these 3 kings indicate this idea that within Daniel's lifetime, we had 3 kingdoms in Daniel's experience. When Daniel was young, he lived in Judah, and there was a king of Judah. And then that kingdom was sent into exile, and Babylon took over. And then towards the end of Daniel's life, Babylon was then overthrown by the Medo-Persian Empire, and the Medo-Persian Empire took over. And we see this progression across these chapters, or really across the whole book. But it can kind of cause us to conclude something that we see in Daniel chapter 4 in the story of Nebuchadnezzar's humiliation. And this is a phrase that appears 3 times in Daniel chapter 4, which I think epitomizes really a large part of the theme of this book. So in Daniel chapter 4, verses 17, 25, and 32, this is only part of those verses, but this phrase is repeated 3 times. The Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will. And this shows that despite the fact that Judah went into exile and then Babylon was captured by the Medo-Persian Empire, all of that within the space of 70 years, despite all that, it is the Most High who rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will. Well, I hope you found that interesting. In the next video, we're going to discuss a few similar ideas as well. Hopefully we'll see you there.